Why your prayers for money fail. Jesus used this monad command instead. The difference is shocking. If you have ever prayed for more money, for financial relief, for abundances, and nothing changed, this video is the answer to why. It is not because you lacked faith. It is not because you were unworthy. It is because the system you were taught to use was designed deliberately, intentionally, to produce exactly the result you received. Jesus did not pray for money, not once. Not in any form that resembles what millions of people do every day in churches, in bedrooms, in moments of desperation. Jesus used something entirely different, a monad command. And tonight, for the first time, you will understand both why your prayers have failed and what replaces them. The architecture of a failing system before understanding what Jesus actually used. It is necessary to understand why the system most people are using is structurally incapable of producing the results they seek. This is not a critique of faith. It is a technical observation about how energy, intention, and material reality interact, and how a system designed to manage those interactions can be built to produce failure as its primary output. The prayer system that dominates modern religious practice was not designed by Jesus. It was designed by the institutional forces that inherited his teachings and then systematically processed them through centuries of translation, theological revision, and political calculation. At the center of that design is a core assumption that the human being is separate from the source of abundance. This assumption is so deeply embedded in modern prayer culture that most people never question it. When you pray for money, the implicit grammar of the act is, I do not have this. Something outside of me must provide it. I am asking that outside thing to intervene on my behalf. This grammar of separation is not spiritually neutral. It generates a specific energetic frequency, a frequency of lack, of dependence, of perpetual incompleteness. And here's what the ancient Gnostic teachers understood that modern theology has entirely forgotten. The universe does not respond to what you ask for. It responds to what you are being. When you pray from lack, you are being lack. When you command from sovereign fullness, you are being abundance. The material field has no choice but to reflect what you are being back into your physical experience. Jesus understood this at the deepest possible level, which is why he never, in any recorded teaching, instructed his inner circle to pray for money. He instructed them in something fundamentally different, what the monad command actually is. The monad, in the teaching tradition that Jesus carried, is not a distant theological concept. It is the name for the unified field of consciousness from which all material reality emerges, the singular source from which all individual expressions of life, matter, energy, and abundance flow. In the Gnostic understanding that Jesus transmitted to his inner circle, every chosen one, every individual who has awakened to their true nature, carries within them a direct connection to the monad that cannot be severed, blocked, or diminished. The archons cannot touch it. Religious systems cannot override it. And this connection is not passive. It is generative. It produces, it commands. A monad command is what happens when a chosen one speaks from the awareness of this connection. Not from the position of a person who lacks something and hopes an outside force will provide it, but from the position of an expression of the source itself, directing the material field to reorganize in accordance with sovereign intention. This is what Jesus was doing in every miracle of abundance. When bread multiplied, when wine appeared from water, when provision arrived for those who had nothing, Jesus was not requesting these outcomes. He was commanding them from the awareness of his monad connection. The Gnostic records, including fragments preserved outside the canonical tradition, indicate that Jesus taught specific verbal commands in Aramaic that activated this monad awareness in the speaker. These commands were structured with precision. They carried specific sound frequencies in the Aramaic language that corresponded to specific activations in the human energetic system. They were not metaphors. They were not suggestions. They were commands, spoken by a sovereign being who had never lost awareness of who they were. What is being revealed in this video represents only the outermost layer of a teaching system that goes far deeper. Those who sense the pull of these ancient Aramaic frequencies, who feel that something older and more powerful than what religion preserved is calling to them, will find the next step already waiting in the description below. The shocking design of religious poverty, the Word shocking in the title of this video is not used for clickbait. It is used because what is about to be stated will genuinely disturb those who encounter it for the first time with open eyes. The prayer for wealth system was not inherited by accident from Jesus' original teachings. It was constructed as a replacement for those teachings, specifically because the original teachings were too dangerous to allow into mainstream circulation. The danger was not theological. It was economic and political. A population that believes it must pray to an external authority for material provision is a population that can be managed. It will remain dependent on the institutions that claim to mediate between the individual and that external authority. It will tithe, donate, and defer to ecclesiastical power structures. It will accept material scarcity as a spiritual virtue rather than recognizing it as an energetic condition that can be changed. The archons understood this dynamic with terrifying precision. The construction of institutional Christianity, the deliberate removal of Gnostic texts, the systematic suppression of direct experience teachings, the replacement of monad command with hierarchical prayer, was not a theological disagreement. It was a control system, and the most elegant feature of this control system is that it uses the name and the authority of Jesus himself to enforce a practice that Jesus never endorsed. Every time a chosen one prays for money the way they were taught in church, they are performing an archon ritual while believing they are following Jesus. The archons did not need to destroy the teachings of Jesus. They only needed to replace the grammar to change the verb from command to ask, and the entire system of sovereign human power collapsed into something they could manage forever. For those watching who are ready to move from understanding to activation, a complete and structured path exists for working with the original sacred Aramaic words, the way Jesus intended, with the correct sound, the full layered meaning, and the complete protocol of use. That path is not hidden. It is in the comentario. The door is open for those who are ready. There are three structural differences between passive prayer and monad command that explain everything. The first difference is the position of the speaker. Passive prayer is spoken from below, from a person who acknowledges that they lack something and hopes a superior force will intervene. Monad command is spoken from sovereignty, from an individual who knows themselves to be an expression of the source. The second difference is the relationship to time. Passive prayer exists in a grammar of future hope. I am asking that something will happen. Monad command exists in a grammar of present authority. I am declaring what is already true in the field of the monad and commanding it to manifest in the physical dimension. Jesus operated entirely in the present tense. When he commanded healing, he did not ask for healing to come. He declared that the energetic reality of wholeness was already present and commanded the physical body to reflect it. The same principle applies to material abundance. The third difference is the relationship to the archon harvest system. When passive prayer generates the frequency of lack and longing, that frequency is readable by the archon field and can be harvested as louche energy. When monad command generates the frequency of sovereign fullness, it creates a coherence in the human energetic field that the archons cannot read, cannot harvest, and cannot block. This is not mystical language. It is a precise description of how consciousness interacts with the material field, a description that the ancient Aramaic tradition encoded into specific words, specific sounds, and specific protocols Jesus used and that are now being restored to those who were always meant to carry them. Activating the monad command tonight, the practical application of what has been shared tonight begins with a single internal shift. And this shift is both the simplest and the most demanding thing a chosen one will ever do. It is the shift from identifying as someone who needs to, someone who commands. This is not affirmation. It is not positive thinking in the modern self-help sense. It is a genuine recognition, even if it begins as an intellectual recognition before it becomes a felt experience, that you are not separate from the source of all abundance. You are an expression of it, and as an expression of it, you carry the authority to direct it. From this recognition, the monad command is spoken. The specific Aramaic formulations that Jesus used carry frequencies that accelerate this recognition. They are not decorative language. They are vibrational keys. But even before those specific words are used with full protocol, the internal shift is the foundation. Tonight, before anything else, sit in. Stillness, not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of presence, the awareness that is watching your thoughts without being trapped inside them. From that place of presence, release the posture of asking. Release every version of yourself that has ever knelt before an external authority and said, please. That version of you was operating from a script the archons wrote for you, before you were old enough to question it. The version of you that is watching this video is being called back to a different script, one that was written before the archons existed, by the same source that wrote you into being. Speak to abundance from that place. Not please, not I hope. I command. Wealth moves. Provision flows. The field responds to who I am, and I am an expression of the source that generates everything. Chapter 6. Summary and closing. The failure of money prayers is not a personal failure. It is a structural outcome of a system that was designed to produce exactly that result, to keep chosen ones locked in the frequency of lack so that their energetic output could be harvested by the archons who built the system. Jesus never participated in that system. He demonstrated a completely different relationship to material reality, one built on monad command rather than passive petition, on sovereign presence rather than dependent asking, on the grammar of now rather than the grammar of someday. What has been shared tonight is the beginning of your return to that original posture. The shift from asking to commanding is available to every chosen one who has heard this. It begins tonight. It begins the moment you recognize that you were never meant to beg for what was always already yours. The e-book being released in the coming days contains the full and complete teaching of the first two sacred Aramaic words, Ifata and Ena, N-U-H-R-A, including the power encoded in each word, the correct pronunciation and sound frequency, and the complete protocol for use in your daily practice. What has been shared in this video is the foundation. The ebook is the full path. The link to access it or to pre-register is already in the commentary. If something inside you moved while watching this, that movement is the monad recognizing itself. Follow. Italiano.